Hare Krishna, Omajnana Tivandasya Jnanjana Shlakya Saksvanvilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskachai Desatarani.
Recording in progress.
So today we will discuss Canto 2, Chapter 10, verses 19 till 26. So we start with text 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vivaksor Mokato Bumno Vanirvach Vyaritam Tayo Chale Chetasya Chuchiram Nirodha Samajayata. Translation. So when the Supreme desired to speak, speeches were vibrated from the mouth. Then the controlling deity fire was generated from the mouth. But when the Supreme was lying in the water, all these functions remained suspended. So, this is the purport. Someone wants to read the purport?
I can read.
Please. Thank you.
The peculiarity of the gradual development of the different senses is simultaneously supported by their controlling deities. It is to be understood, therefore, that the activities of the sense organs are controlled by the will of the Supreme. The senses are, so to speak, offering license for the conditioned souls, who are to use them properly under the control of the controlling deity, deputed by the Supreme Lord. One who violates such controlling regulations has to be punished by degradation to a lower status of life. Consider, for example, the tongue and its controlling deity, Varuna. The tongue is meant for eating, and man, animals, and birds each have their different tastes because of different licenses. The taste of human beings and that of the swine are not on the same level. The controlling deity, however, awards or certifies a particular type of body when the particular living entity develops a taste in terms of different modes of nature. If the human being develops taste without discrimination, as does the swine, then the controlling deity is certainly certified for the next term to award him the body of a swine. The swine accepts any kind of foodstuff, including stools, and the human being who has developed such indiscriminate taste must be prepared for a degraded life in the next life. Such a life is also God's grace, because the conditioned soul desired a body like that for perfectly tasting a particular type of foodstuff. If a man gets the body of a swine, it must be considered the grace of the Lord, because the Lord awards the facility. After death, the next body is offered by superior control, not blindly. A human being, therefore, must be on his guard as to what sort of body he is going to have in the next life. An irresponsible life of indiscrimination is risky, and that is the declaration of all scriptures.
Thank you. So, the conditioned soul is in this material world to enjoy, and therefore is given these senses. It's like a license they get for sense gratification. But one has to use them properly. How to use them? There are different ways to use them properly. One way is following the Manu Samhita, all the rules there of Karma Kanda. It explains how to enjoy in this material world without becoming degraded, but rather make progress towards the heavenly planets. That's one way. That's for those who want to remain in this material world and enjoy more and more. Or, of course, that includes also offerings to Vishnu, Karmakanda. But also the final word in how to use the senses is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Shakhnarta kamano yatra lokayam karma bandhana. So work should be done, or the sense should be used for the satisfaction of Vishnu. That's the spiritual, those who are on the path of karma yoga or spiritual advancement. But when but of course that these senses are under control of a controlling deity by the Supreme Lord. So we see that theme coming back. The living entity is controlled by the senses. That's conditioned. We are following the senses, the urges of the senses. And the senses, they are controlled by the demigods. And the demigods, they are servants of the Supreme Lord. So the whole thing is controlled by the Supreme Lord, finally. So one who violates these controlling regulations is punished by degradation to a lower state of life. That's also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. One who associates with the modes of ignorance take birth in the animal kingdom. One who associates with the mode of passion, he is reborn among human beings. And one who dominantly associates with the mode of goodness can go to the heavenly planets. So Srila Prabhupada writes, if the human being develops a taste without discrimination, as does the swine, then the controlling deity is certified of the next term to award him the body of a swine. So that is what we learn from this verse. Now the next verse. Thereafter, when the Supreme Purusha desired to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated. The nasal instrument and odors came into existence, and the controlling deity of air carrying smell also became manifested. So that all becomes manifest because of the desire of the Lord. And also something that will return in this chapter is what's the purpose of the creation. There's two purposes. It gives facility to the conditioned soul to enjoy. That's one purpose. The second is, it's the Supreme Lord wants to give them a facility of going back to Godhead. So can someone read the small purport, please?
Can I, Maharaj?
Yes,
Can I
please.
read? Hare Krishna. The nasal instrument, order, and the controlling deity of air, smelling, etc., all became manifested simultaneously when the Lord desired to smell. The Vedic mantras confirm this statement in the Upanishads statement that everything is first desired by the Supreme before the subordinate living entity can act upon it. The living entity can see only when the Lord sees. The living entity can smell when the Lord smells, and so on. The idea is that the living entity cannot do anything independently. He can simply think of doing something independently, but he cannot act independently. This independence in thinking is there by the grace of the Lord, but the thinking can be given shape by the grace of the Lord. And therefore, the common saying is that man proposes and God disposes. The whole explanation is on the subject of the absolute dependence of the living entities and absolute independence of the Supreme Lord. Less intelligent persons claiming to be on equal level with God must first prove themselves to be absolute and independent, and then they must substantiate their claim to be in one with the God. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. So, the Vedic mantras confirm this statement. So, it's in the Upanishads. The Lord first everything desired, that, and then the subordinating living being acts upon it. So that's the theme in this first in this first part of this chapter, that we cannot do anything independent, that we can think of doing something independent, but we cannot act independently. It's just not possible. That so less intelligent persons, they think to be on an equal level with God, but first they must prove themselves to be absolute and independent, and they must substantiate their claim of being one with God. So this is in this verse, this independence is explained. We cannot be independent. We can think we are independent, and we see that day to day in people who claim when we do this, they have big plans and they are going to realize their plans. But what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita about these plan makers? That the plan makers, it's explained in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I think it's 9. As Krishna says, Avajananti Mamuda Manushim Tan Mashvitam Parambhavamajanta Mama Bhutamashvara. Fools that like me, when I descend in human form, they do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So they are denying the control of God. And people with such a mentality, yes, they are described in text 12 of the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Moksha moga karmana mogyana vishetasa rakshasi mashrem shiva prakatim moinim shvitaha. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. So these are atheistic views, not seeing the hand of Krishna, of God in one's life. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, for fruitive activities and their culture of knowledge are all being defeated. So fruitive activities, culture of knowledge, it's all finished. So whatever they want to achieve, Krishna says here, it's defeated, baffled. They will not get it. It's just an idea. Text 21. Yadatmani niralokam atmanam satratiksata Nirbine yakshini tasya jyotishaksha gunagraha. Thus, when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God's Son, the power of vision and the object of sight all became manifested. It's a small purport, I will read it. The universe is by nature dense darkness, and therefore the total creation is called tamas or darkness. The night is the real feature of the universe, for then one cannot see anything, including oneself. The Lord, out of his causeless mercy, first desired to see himself and all the creations as well, and thus the sun became manifest. The power of vision for all living entities became possible, and the objects of vision were also manifested. This means that the whole phenomenal world became visible after the creation of the sun. So, what characterizes really this material world? It's darkness. It's night. That's the real feature of the universe. That in darkness we cannot see anything, including ourselves. And that's the darkness of ignorance in this world. People cannot understand who they are. They cannot see things as they are. In Bhagavad Gita, it's described how one can see things as they are. And that's described chapter 5. We have text 5. Yat sankhya papateshtanam tat yoger apigamyate ekasam sayogam sa yapasal sapashati. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study and can also attain by devotional service, and we would therefore cease analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. So to see things as they are, one must attain this position of devotional service. Then the heart will be cleansed. Of course, the angle of vision is different in this verse, but the principle is the same. That means that the whole phenomenal world became visible after the creation of the sun. That without the sun, the eyes have no meaning. And even when the sun is there and the eyes are there, then you must have objects to see. And Krishna creates them also. Another point here is this desire of the Lord. The Lord desired to see himself, and then things happened. So our desire comes only secondary. When we desire something, if a desire comes from the soul, then Paramatma in the heart notices first our desire. He knows first our desire before we know it. Because in this material world, how can we know our desire when it pops up in the mind? Even if it comes from the soul, and who puts it in our mind is the super soul. So he knows our desire before we know our desire. It's a little funny, but it's the reality. Now text 22. Potyamanasya risibir Atmanastat shiriksata karnasa niravichetam disa sotram gunagraha. By development of the desire of the great sages to know the ears, the power of hearing, the controlling deity of hearing, and the objects of hearing became manifested. The great sages desired to hear about the self. Someone can read this paper, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
So, yes,
Could I read?
please go.
Thank you. Thank you. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, by advancement of knowledge, one should try to know about the Supreme Lord, the summum bonum of everything. Knowledge does not mean knowledge only of the laws of nature or physical knowledge, which are working by the direction of the Lord. The scientists are eager to hear about the physical laws working in material nature. They are eager to hear through the medium of radio and television about things taking place far away from them on other planets. But they should know that the power of hearing and the instruments for hearing were given to them by the Lord, for hearing about the self or about the Lord. Unfortunately, the power of hearing is misused and in hearing the vibrations of mundane affairs. The great sages were interested in hearing about the Lord through Vedic knowledge and nothing more. That is the beginning of oral reception of knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. The power of hearing is misused, he said, in hearing vibrations of mundane affairs. So that's not easy for us. That if we hear about things in this world, then we become degraded. That unless these things have a connection with Krishna. So here we have these great sages of Namisaranya. They are interested in hearing about the Lord through Vedic knowledge and nothing more. So that was their business of these sages of Namisaranya. And we should follow in their footsteps. If we hear about the Lord, then we will gladly come to know what we should do and what we should not do to become a devotee. Of course, Srila Goswami has that summarized in the Nectar of Instructions, and Atyara Prayasasya, Prajalpa Niyamaga, and so on, 6 things not to do, that and Utsaya Nisaya Daya Tat Atkama Vartanat, Sangatyara Satovite Satpri Bhakti, Ashidati, 6 things to do. But there we get that same thing, Prajalpa, not hearing about mundane things. No Prajalpa should be allowed. So scientists are eager to hear about the physical laws working in material nature, but they forget the lawmaker. Their answers are not very deep on the surface. So we should. Interesting, Srila Prabhupada makes that comparison. Through the radio and television, we heard what's taking place in other parts of the world. Similarly, we should hear from the bar of them and hear what's going on in this universe and beyond in the spiritual world, just by hearing. So that oral reception we have also discussed in the first canto, that the 7th chapter, verse 5 of 6, there it said, one who takes the oral reception of the topics in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that just by that oral reception, the hearing these topics injected into the ear, one becomes free from LIF, lamentation, illusion, and fear. It's so powerful. Text 23. Vastanumritu katinya lakurosna sittatam Shikrik satastvanirpina tasya roma mahiruha tatra chantar pahar fantas tvacha lapta kanuvrita. When there was a desire to perceive the physical characteristics of matter, just as softness, hardness, warmth, coldness, lightness, and heaviness, the background of the touch sensation was generated, namely the skin pores, and the body hairs, along with their controlling deities, the trees. Within and outside the skin, there is a covering of air through which the touch sensation became prominent. So that text 23. Someone wants to read it, please. The purport.
I can read Maharaj.
Please do.
The physical characteristics of matter, such as softness, are subject of sense perception, and thus physical knowledge is the subject matter of the touch sensation. One can measure the temperature of matter by touching with the hand, and one can measure the weight of an object by lifting it with the hand, and thus estimate its heaviness or lightness. The skin and the skin pores and the hairs on the body are all interdependent with the touch sensation. The air blowing within the outside the skin is also an object of sense perception. The sense perception is also a source of knowledge, and therefore is suggested here that physical or physiological knowledge is subordinate to the knowledge of the self. As above mentioned, knowledge of the self can expand to the knowledge of phenomena, but physical knowledge cannot lead to knowledge of the self. There is, however, an intimate relationship between the hairs on the body and the vegetation on the body of the earth. The vegetables are nourishment for the skin, both as food and medicine, as stated in the third canto. Prachamasya miribinam vishu di vishniyam also di.
Thank you. So the knowledge of the self, spiritual knowledge, can expand into knowledge of the phenomena. And that we see here. Lord Krishna desires, and it starts to happen, that by spiritual touch all these things are going on. But physical knowledge cannot lead to knowledge of the self, and that's problematic. That the source of knowledge is different, and also the method to get the knowledge is different. Knowledge, spiritual knowledge, we get to the Guru Parampara coming from Krishna, and we get to the heart by realization if you follow the proper instructions. Also knowledge, even Brahma, and this the first verse of the Bhagavatam, Shanmadhyasya yatom vayati taratessa tessa brihyaspara tenne Brahma hridaya adikavaye. So the knowledge to create was given to Brahma, to the heart. But he first received the Bhagavatam Chaturshloka. And from there everything expanded. Also it expanded in the knowledge how to create So this demonstrates this point. A second point addressed here, the relation like between the hairs on the body, on our body, and the vegetation on the body of the earth. This, the vegetation, vegetables. Vegetables are nourishment for the skin, both as food and medicine, as stated in the third canto. Good knowledge. If you want to have a healthy skin, eat fresh vegetables. That's Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a very deep science, but we have lost a lot of it. Only a few chapters of the Ayurveda available, about 140 verses or something, I heard sometime. But it's very important knowledge that with this knowledge we can know what to do for our spiritual betterment and our material welfare. Text 24. Hastaro hatustasya nana karma sikirshaya tayastu balavan indra adanam ubayasayam. Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, the two hands and their controlling strength, and Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifest, as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigods. Someone can read the purport of 24?
Yes, Maharaj.
Please do, thank you.
In every item, we can note with profit that the sense organs of the living entity are never independent at any stage. The Lord is known as the Lord of the senses, Rishikesha. Thus, the sense organs of the living entities are manifested by the will of the Lord, and each organ is controlled by a certain type of demigod. No one, therefore, can claim any proprietorship of the senses. The living entity is controlled by the senses. The senses are controlled by the demigods, and the demigods are the servants of the Supreme Lord. That is the arrangement in the system of creation. The whole thing is controlled ultimately by the Supreme Lord, and there is no independence either of the material nature or of the living entity. The illusioned living entity who claims to be the Lord of his senses is under the clutches of the external energy of the Lord. As long as a living entity continues to be puffed up by his tiny existence, he is to be understood to be under the stringent control of external energy of the Lord. And there is no question of liberation from the clutches of illusion, Maya, however much one may declare himself a liberated soul.
So it means that the sense organs, Srila Prabhupada writes, of the living entity are never independent at any stage. So the Lord is called Rishikesh, he said. The Lord who controls all the senses. And each sense is controlled by a certain demigod. So again, the living entity is controlled by the senses. The senses are controlled by the demigods, and the demigods are servants of the Supreme Lord. So everything is controlled by the Supreme Lord. So the illusioned living entity, who claims to be the Lord of his senses, is under the control of the clutches of the external energy of the Lord. So as long as the living entity continues to be puffed up by his tiny existence, he is to be understood to be under stringent control of the external energy of the Lord, and there is no question from the clutches of illusion. Maya, however much might declare himself a liberated soul. So that's the reality, that we are not in control. We desire, but we don't have control over our lives. But we have control over how we react to the circumstances that Krishna gives us. And that's important for all of us, that sometimes we get suffering, and how do we react? Sometimes we get happiness. How do we react to that? That's how we should react is explained in Bhagavad Gita in different places, 5.20. Naprashyatret priyam papyano vichat prapya sapriyam stirbadura samudra brahmavid brahmani stitaha. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving some pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligence, who is unbewildered, and who knows the signs of God, is already situated in transcendence. That means a devotee becomes indifferent to this happiness and distress given to us by the demigods who control the senses and the mind and so on. That it's just a reaction to our past misdeeds. Indifferent does not mean that we are indifferent to the suffering of other living entities. That would be a wrong conclusion. No, we try to give them Krishna consciousness to make a final solution of this engagement, this control by our senses and by the demigods. That Queen Kunti prays, I'm sick of getting controlled by these senses. So that a devotee sees this reality. This is my position in this material world, and I'm in difficulty. Therefore, I surrender to the Supreme Lord. Text 25. Katim chiki sata pado uruhate pikamikam patyam chakya svayam avyam karmabhi kriyate nirbihi. So, thereupon, because of his desire to control movement, his legs became manifested, and from the legs the controlling deity named Vishnu was generated. By his personal supervision of this act, all varieties of human beings are busily engaged in dutiful occupational sacrifice. So we have a purport. Can someone read just the first paragraph into the deep regions of darkness at the end? This paragraph. Please read.
Can I read, Maharaj?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Every human being is engaged in his particular occupational duty, and such activities are visible as men go hither and thither. This is very prominently visible in big cities of the world. People are going all over the cities with great concern from one place to another. This movement is not limited only to the cities, but is also visible outside the cities from one place to another, or from one city to another by different means of vehicles. Men are moving by cars and rails on the roads. by subways within the earth, and by planes in the sky for the purpose of business success. But in all these movements, the real purpose is to earn wealth for comfortable life. For this comfortable life, the scientist is engaged, the artist is engaged, the engineer is engaged, the technician is engaged, all in different branches of human society, different branches of human activity. But they do not know how to make the activities purposeful to fulfill the mission of human life. Because they do not know the secret, all their activities are targeted towards the goal of sense gratification without control, and therefore by all this business they are unknowingly entering into the deep regions of darkness.
Yeah. Srila Prabhupada says, what's the purpose of all these movements, of all these living entities in this world? The real purpose is to earn wealth for comfortable life. We see in every country today there are so many trucks going from one place to another. Every day there are so many people dying on the road just because of that. But their purpose is to get wealth by one way or another. They do not know how to make the activities purposeful to fulfill the mission of life. And that's a problem. And that's typical not only for this people of this age, but we must say that practically everyone of this age is pranal payusha sabya kala vasmins yuge janama mandasumanda matayo mandabhya upadutaha upadutata, always disturbed, that, but they are, yes, they see only, they are short-sighted. They see only the moment of enjoyment, but they dare not question, why am I here? Why am I in this situation? How did this happen? Is it all by chance, as most people think? From the Vedas we understand chance does not exist. Nothing happens by chance in this world. It's all predestined by our own previous activities. But they see only this enjoyment, and this enjoyment is the source of their unhappiness. Because that's the law in the material world. You want to enjoy, you must pay for that with suffering. It's stringent law of material nature. And still, their only purpose is to earn wealth, although they may leave their body every moment. They do not make how to make their activities purposeful for the mission of human life, for getting liberation, to get out of this hell. That's when Srila Prabhupada was in England, that someone asked him, what do you think of England? Or what do you think of London? Srila Prabhupada said, it's hell. And they were shocked. But that's the material world. It's hell everywhere. But we are creating this hell by just focusing on animal propensities. Like it said before in a purport, we are doing activities which are not permitted in the scriptures, and that causes our degradation. So by all their business, they are unknowingly entering in the deeper regions of darkness. Can someone read the next paragraph?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Because they have captivated by the external energy of the Supreme Lord. Because they have been captivated by the external energy of the Supreme Lord, they have completely forgotten the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and thus they have taken it for granted that this life, as presently manifested under the conditions of material nature, is all in all for enjoying the highest amount of sense gratification. But such a wrong conception of life cannot give anyone the desired peace of mind. And thus, in spite of all advancement in knowledge, by use of the resources of nature, no one is happy in this material civilization. The secret is that at every step they should try to execute sacrifices toward the path of world peace. The Bhagavad Gita 18:45-46 also advises the same secret in the following verses. Should I read the verses as well?
In the verses and the translation, yeah, and then we stop there.
Okay. Sve sve karmanyabhirata samsiddhim lapate naraha svakarmani rata siddhim yatha vindati tach Shinu Yata Pavritir Bhutanam Yena Sarvam Idam Tatam Svakarmana Tam Abhyarchya Siddhim Vindati Manavaha. The Lord said to Arjuna, just hear from me how one can attain the highest perfection in life simply by discharging his specified occupational duty. Man can attain the highest perfection of life by worshipping the Supreme Lord and by performing sacrifice for the sake of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is all-pervading and by whose control every living being acquires his desired facilities according to his personal propensity.
Yes. But everyone is captivated by the external energy of the Supreme Lord, Srila Prabhupada writes. They have completely forgotten the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So that's why we are here. Because when we forget Krishna, we forget who we are. And then we desire to act for our own enjoyment, and we get a material body. And then we act for this illusory body, this temporary body, for some time, and we go from body to body. So that's the wrong conception of life, and that wrong conception of life starts with forgetting Krishna. Because we forget our own identity. So, such a wrong conception of life, Srila Prabhupada says, cannot give anyone the desired peace of mind. It's not possible. But then Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse here from Bhagavad Gita. And yes, he says the secret is that at every step they should try to execute sacrifices to the the path of world peace. Sacrifices to peace to please Krishna. This is devotional service, essence of devotional service. Okay, if someone can read the last paragraph, please.
Maharaj, I can read.
Yes, Achapa. Yeah.
There is no harm in having different propensities in life because every human being is proportionately independent to chart out the plan of his life the different occupations. But one should make it a point in his life to know perfectly well that he is not independent absolutely. One is certainly under the control of the Supreme Lord and under different agencies. Knowing this, one should make it a point that by his work and the result of his labor, he serves the Supreme Lord as prescribed by the authorities, except in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. For performing such occupational duties of life, the leg is the most important instrument of the body, because without the help of the legs, one cannot move from one place to another, and therefore the Lord has special control over the legs of all human beings, which are meant for performing yatna.
Yes, that's the purpose. The purpose is to use the legs here, but Bhagavad Gita says that buddhas tadatmas, tat nishtas, tat praina, gacchant apunaravitam, jnana, nirtuta kalmasam. When one's intelligence, mind, faith and refuse are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgiving through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. So if we use all our senses in the service of the Supreme Lord, it is here using one's mind. The mind is the steer wheel of the senses, and must steer the senses to be used in the Supreme Lord. That then we are connected with the Lord and we will become purified. And we are on the way to get back our natural spiritual position. But to do that, one must know that one is not independent. So we have a little independence. But we must act within the circumstances which Krishna gives us. We are only the servant of the circumstances that Krishna gives us. That Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj used to say always, we make plans and then he would say, if Krishna willing, then it becomes true. So we have to undergo the reactions of our past activities. Mostly we can say as, well, what will be my future happiness and distress in this life? Mostly you look to your past, what you already experienced, and mostly the future is not much different. I got this is yes. This was a devotee I was counseling, and he was working in a restaurant in Ireland, in an ISKCON restaurant. And he wrote me, yes, but they are not paying me. I've not been paid for the last 2-3 months. So he was complaining that, yes. And he decided to go to America, and he came into New York. Finally he was paid with a lot of delay, but he went to New York and was working there in a Govinda restaurant. And 2 months later we had a call and said, but they are not paying me already 2 months. So he came in right the same situation there. You think I'm going to change my situation and then I'm going to have a better situation, but your karma does not allow that. All that changing from one place to another, it's useless. It's like at the other side, the grass looks always greener. but it looks only. You get the same happiness and distress, and that's instead of trying to focus on this material happiness, one should know I'm not independent. I can change my situation, but not my happiness and distress. Comes with you. So knowing this, one should make it a point that by his work and the result of his labor is serve the Supreme Lord. And that's the point Srila Prabhupada nails down here. That Lord, when one serves the Supreme Lord, how? By one's prescribed duties. And one should follow authorities, how to do that, how to dovetail my activities in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. So this knowledge we hear, this philosophy, but we have to change our behavior and our thinking. That you have seen some devotees said, yes, because he was a Prabhupada disciple and he was always very enlivened when he heard the classes of Prabhupada, but then he said I became more enlightened, he said, or more enlivened when I went with Srila Prabhupada on his morning walks. Because Prabhupada, when he went on his morning walks, he would see everything he saw philosophically. And that's interesting. Our vision must change. That how we see the world through this knowledge. Okay, the last verse of today, 26. Nirabityatashis vai pajan andam ritachtina upasta ashit kamanam priyam tat upayasrayam. Thereupon for sexual pleasure, begetting offspring and tasting heavenly nectar, the Lord developed genitals, and thus there is the genital organ and its controlling deity, the Prajapati. Sexual pleasure and its controlling deity are under the control of the genitals of the Lord. So, can someone read the purport?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj, can I read?
Please do.
Yes. The heavenly pleasure for the conditioned soul is sexual pleasure, and this pleasure is tasted by the genitals. The woman is the object of sexual pleasure, and both the sense perception of sexual pleasure and the woman are controlled by the Prajapati, who is under the control of the Lord's genitals. The impersonalist must know from this verse that the Lord is not impersonal, for he has his genitals on which all the pleasurable objects of sex depend. No one would have taken the trouble to maintain children if there were no taste of heavenly nectar by means of sexual intercourse. This material world is created to give the conditioned souls a chance for rejuvenation, for going back home, back to Godhead. And therefore, generation of the living being is necessary for upkeep of the purpose of creation. Sexual pleasure is an impetus for such action, and as such, one can even serve the Lord in the act of such sexual pleasure. The service is counted when the children born of such sexual pleasure are properly trained in God consciousness. The whole idea of material creation is to revive the dormant God consciousness of the living entity. In forms of life other than the human form, sexual pleasure is prominent without any motive of service for the mission of the Lord. But in the human form of life, the conditioned soul can render service to the Lord by creating progeny suitable for the attainment of salvation. One can beget hundreds of children and enjoy the celestial pleasure of sexual intercourse, provided he is able to train the children in God consciousness. Otherwise, begetting children is on the level of the swine. Rather, the swine is more expert than the human being because the swine can beget a dozen piglets at a time, whereas the human being can give birth to only one at a time. So, one should always remember that the genitals, sexual pleasure, the woman, and the offsprings are all related in the service of the Lord, and one who forgets this relationship in the service of the Supreme Lord becomes subjected to the threefold miseries of material existence by the laws of nature. Perception of sexual pleasure is there even in the body of the dog, but there is no sense of God consciousness. The human form of life is distinction, that of the dog by the perception of God consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So we have always these two aspects. Material world is created to give a facility for those who want sense enjoyment, who want to exploit and enjoy in this world. And it's also created to give the conditioned souls a chance for rejuvenation, Srila Prabhupada writes, for going back home, back to Godhead. And therefore generation of living beings is necessary for the upkeep of the purpose of creation. Sexual pleasure is an impetus for such action. So that is the purpose why this sexual pleasure is there. It's for the upkeep of the purpose of creation. But of course, this sexual attraction is going together with lust, and lust covers one's intelligence, so it's a great challenge. We can try to think like that, but if lust takes over, you forget all this, and then we suffer. Because that's what the point Prabhupada makes. One who forgets this relationship in the service of the Supreme Lord becomes subjected to the threefold miseries of material existence by the laws of nature. But still, Srila Prabhupada says, one can serve the Lord in an act of sexual pleasure. The service is counted when the children born of such sexual pleasure are properly trained in God consciousness. Otherwise, begetting children is on the level of the swine. It's a heavy statement that people are getting children in this world like animals. Because who thinks like that in this world? That I can only have children to train them in Krishna consciousness. They are not my children, they are Krishna's children. And I must help the Supreme Lord to bring them back to Godhead. That 5.5.18 Srimad Bhagavatam. Go na sasyat, vajanu na sasyat, pitana sasyat, janani na sasyat. Devam na tasyan, napatis na sasyan, namokshyaya, samupetamityam. One who cannot deliver his dependence from the power of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. Means one should not father children if one cannot really become a father who is a spiritual master, who has the power to liberate his children. So it's heavy if we think about that, but that's what the scriptures say. That's also what Lord Rishabhadev, King Rishabhadev says to his sons. Because these sons, most of them will become, from these 100 sons, most of them will become Grihastas. They will become Grihastas. And therefore they are sent. Then you have the story of these 10,000 sons of Prajapati Daksha, the Haryasvas, which will we see later in the Bhagavatam, and they were sent to the side of a river to perform austerities, to perform for Grihastha life, to control this sexual urge, and being self-controlled. That is important for those in Grihastha life, that they normally, according to the Vedic system, they go first to brahmachari training to control their senses, and then they enter Grihastha life. That's a preparation, and they study the purpose of having children and so on in the Gurukul. They are trained based on these principles. But where is the training in this modern society? It's just, yes, I love you, you love me, we are attracted by the senses and the mind. I'm going to find my soulmate, I think. But that's nothing to do with the soul, because a soulmate, I think, is someone with the same likes and dislikes as I have. So who have the same mental concoction, or the mental, who are compatible in this material world, but that's nothing to do with the soul. Of course, in the Vedic system, we have the astrology. They make predictions of they can go along with each other, and that's intelligent to do that. But you need a good astrologer, and a good astrologer to do that is very, very rare. But we know a good astrologer. It's an astrologer who did Srila Prabhupada's predictions at birth, when he said after at the age of 70 he will cross the ocean and open 108 temples. That was a good astrologer, but they are very, very rare. So Grihastha life requires a lot of training and consideration, and Srila Prabhupada gives many instructions for Grihasthas how to do that. In the Shikshamrita, you can read all these letters to Grihasthas, and it's full of guidance which we should take. Because if we forget our relationship of service with the Lord, we become subjected to the threefold misery, Srila Prabhupada said. Then we suffer material existence by the laws of nature. But these Aryasvas were sent to be trained. Of course, then Narada Muni came and said, oh, they are nicely trained to make progress towards liberation. I will give them a little push. And he told his story. There is a land, we will hear that later in the Bhagavatam, a land where there is one king, and there is one man, and his wife changes different dresses and to attract him. And then there is a river which flows in two directions, and at the end of the river there is a razor blade which turns and destroys everything. So when I read this story in the Bhagavatam, I was thinking, I don't understand this. What's this about? Then Srila Prabhupada explains it in the purport. By that we can understand. We think we are in our own kingdom, in this body. And our wife is the mind which proposes so many things to do and not to do in this world, to enjoy that. And we follow that, and we go in two directions, sometimes happiness and distress, But at the end we go to the razor blade and everything is destroyed, all our plans. So these Haryasvas, they were quite intelligent and they understood the words of Narada Muni. And they said, yes, okay, let's all take sannyas. And they took all sannyas. Of course, Daksha was furious because he was a Prajapati. He has created all these sons with the purpose that they will help with the population of the universe, which was his mission, and which was a mission he got from Brahma, and Brahma got his mission from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So of course, with Prajapati again, created 1,000 sons. Only 1,000, he was more careful the next time. The Sasyalasvas. And he sent them to the same place to do these austerities, to prepare for Hyasta life. Of course, he knew that Narada Muni could come again. But still, he sent them. What does that mean? This is very important. This preparation for Hyasta life, according to the conceptions and the guidance Srila Prabhupada gives in this verse and this purport that we just have read. It's so important. Of course, the Narada Muni came again. And Narada Muni, when he saw these brothers, he was thinking, I will not tell the story again. He just tell to them that a younger brother should follow in the footsteps of their older brother. And they understood all what happened, and they all also took all sannyas. Of course, that was too much for Prajapati Daksha. We will hear that later in the Bhagavatam. But we see the same thing, and that's interesting. I think it's in the 4th canto. There you have Priyavrata Maharaj. Priyavrata, in the beginning, well, he was a disciple of Narada Muni, and he was doing austerities in the Himalayas and studying the scriptures, and he felt very satisfied with it. But then he got news from his father, Brahma. And Brahma told him, it was his great-grandfather, Brahma, you should become the emperor of the whole world. So Priyavrata, he asked Narada Muni, his spiritual master, should I do that? And is that not dangerous for my spiritual life? And Narada Muni said, since you are feeling satisfied as brahmachari, you remain brahmachari, no need to do that. Of course then, Brahma heard this. And Brahma heard this, and he came down on his swan. When Priyavrata and Narada Muni were there. And Narada Muni and Priyavrata offered their respects, and Brahma overruled the instruction of Narada Muni. He said, you should become the emperor. It's my instruction. I received this instruction from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I give you the same instruction to the Guru. This is Guru Parampara. But then Priyavrata asked this same question, is that not dangerous for my spiritual life? And Narada Muni said, as long as you focus on the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you will never be in illusion and you will be protected. So that's the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to get children and train them in Krishna consciousness with that purpose, following the order. And that's important. And these principles are explained here in that text 26. One can serve the Lord in the act of sexual pleasure, but it's meant to have children and probably train them in Krishna consciousness. So one must have also spiritual knowledge to do that. In this verse, Guruna Sasya, Vajana Sasya, Pitana Satya, one cannot become a father, a mother, if one is not able to explain to the children and educate them in God consciousness. But if we forget that, we forget our relationship with Krishna. And then we get karmic reactions and so on, and we become distressed. So, in that sense, human life is distinct from that of a dog by perception of God consciousness, Srila Prabhupada writes. So, any question, please?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Nilamani Prabhu. Please speak.
Yes, Maharaj. So, reading these texts, move from 10 to the current text, it is basically describing the creation of the Virata Rupa, right? And the Lord desires to create this form, and gradually this form is developed. In the beginning, it says the Lord created the Garbhodak ocean and lied there for some time, and then afterwards this whole process of the Virat Rupa creation started. So I'm trying to understand, Maharaj, is there one Virat Rupa per universe, or is there one overall Virat Rupa that contains all the universes?
So, the Virat Rupa, the principle is all the same. And this Virat Rupa is an imaginary form, because it's temporary and can only be seen by divine eyes. But it's used many times in the scriptures. It's used to explain the four orders of life, where they're situated. The Brahmins are the head, Kshatriyas are the arms of the Virat Rupa, and the Vaishyas are on the waist, and the Sudras are the legs. So it's explained used in many ways, but the Lord can manifest this Virat Rupa in different ways. He manifested it to Arjuna, and he said, no one ever before has seen this particular universal form. But he showed also the universal form before to Duryodhana. But that was another universal form. So even in this universal form, he can show it in various ways, according to his desire. So it's in that way that, this, of course, in every universal egg, you have the same story, more or less. The principles are the same. That we have also 4 orders of life, that all these things are there that are described for this universe. That's not going to be different. But how Krishna shows it, that is up to him. That if he wants to show you the same universal form, yeah, then you see the same. If he wants to show you another one, you will see another one. That it depends on him. So that's what I can say, Nilamani Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so I think we can understand that really it is coming from Garbhodaksha Vishnu emanating, if we can think of it that way.
Yes.
It has an imaginary form, and therefore it's really part of every universe. But okay, I understand. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, but that's an important point you are making, because it all starts with the desire of the Lord. That is what we hear here. And Garbhodakasaya, Vishnu desired and expanded him in Kshirodakasaya Vishnu, who entered every atom, and then everything starts to move. And that we will hear more in detail about the creation in the 3rd canto. Whole chapter is based on that. How everything moves because he enters every atom as Kshirodakasaya Vishnu. So by that we can understand that everything in this world, everything has a color. The color is due to the supersoul in every atom, who makes it radiate in a certain way that it shows this color for our eyes. That because it's related to the eyes, it's not. It's interdependent. That's also what we learn here. That it's not that what we see is the absolute reality. The demigods have other eyes. They see other things. That even in this world, we can hear certain things between subsonic and up to the supersonic, but not beyond. But the dogs, they can hear sounds beyond, far beyond our hearing capacity. The same thing, what can we see? We can see from ultraviolet to infrared, but not beyond. So seeing this universal form is also going together with the capacity Krishna gives us to see things. And that capacity can be different. And that's up to Krishna. So it's therefore our senses are useless to see the reality really. That's something we learn. Any other question, please?
Maharaj, I want to add to this, seeing what we see, may not exist or something different in the world. So Prabhupada uses the term in Bhagavad Gita, even, we just read somewhere, phenomenal world, phenomenal creation. Not creation, phenomenal world.
Yeah.
And the dictionary meaning of phenomenal, as dictionary open, it says, perceptible by the senses or through immediate experience. So that's what phenomenal world is. Now, as per modern science, philosophers, the phenomenal world is what we are experiencing through our senses, what I'm seeing from the eye, through ear and touching. And Descartes, the French mathematician who is known as the father of modern science, he says that he said in 1400s, when he was there. He said, what I am seeing is actually a reflection of light. If you turn off the light, you don't see it. When you turn the light on, you see all that. So because it's a reflection of light I am seeing, and my brain is analyzing it in a certain way, and I'm experiencing that this is what exists. But what is the guarantee that what my brain is telling me is what is out there in the world? So how can I prove it through science that this is what exists outside? He said, God is merciful, He will reveal this to us someday. This is what he said.
Yeah.
And so modern science is today also is having the same challenge of confirming the experience I'm having that really exists outside. Because all of this is sense experience. And Prabhupada uses the word phenomenal world several places. He's talking about the same thing, world of experience. It's not, what exists is something else. It's something different than what I'm experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is Descartes. Descartes said these things that he understood a little part of the big picture.
Yeah.
So he understood, yes, that mainly there is an interdependence between the objects, between the light and what's going on in my mind. And that's some intelligence. Krishna gave him some intelligence, but it did not came to the point who made this interdependence. What's the cause of that? So we are going much more deeper than Descartes here. And that. And what we are seeing is an experience in the mind. There was another Irish philosopher, a little later than Descartes, and he said, well, whatever we see in this world, it's the mind. It's all in the mind. That, and we can, but that's also a partial construction of the truth, because what's in our mind? That what we see in our mind, we know that when we dream, when in our dream we eat sweet rice, the taste is the same as we eat sweet rice with our senses. So the experience is in the mind, yes, and we identify with the mind, and that makes it all that. But yes, but who gives us this experience? Who made it as such? But we see only a part of the picture. We cannot see the demigods. We cannot see the evil spirits sometimes. But they are there. All these things are there. There are some of the subtle platform. Much more things are going on. And by studying the Bhagavatam, we understand this. There are subtle forces here. Demigods are subtle forces. They are there, they are witnesses, seeing us. We think we are alone, but we can never be alone. All these demigods are there, and they're looking at us. They are observing us, and so on. That, yes, that makes us aware. It makes us more conscious of what's going on. To understand the whole picture, that's another thing. So, Purna Pragya Keshava, please.
Maharaj, I just wanted to add something to what Ajay Prabhu just said.
Yeah.
And that is more like quite recently I'd read an article, I think it was with Time magazine or something, where again the whole talk was that what we are seeing is everything an illusion, and they brought some 2-3 very nice examples. One of their point was that, let's say the the shirt I am wearing, what's the color? Maybe all of us will say it's blue color. But if a dog walks into the room and the dogs can't see, they're colorblind. So a dog will say it's like, say something like a gray color or something like that. But if a bee walks in, honeybee flies, because honeybee can see ultraviolet light. So honeybee will see the same shirt that I am wearing in a different color. So they say like I see it as a particular color, blue. A dog sees it at some other color, and then the honeybee sees it as still some other color. So what then is the real color of this shirt that I am wearing? So what we are seeing, like in a way, illusion. And the same example they give about the night sky. When you look up in the night sky, so there are these different stars up in the sky, and some stars are whatever 100 light years away, some is 1,000 light years away. So you are seeing when we are seeing like different points of time. We are not even seeing the same point of time. So the star that we are seeing right now, for all it could be some star is 1,000 light years away. Maybe that star no longer exists, but we are seeing that star now. So it was a very using some commonsensical, practical examples. They put across that like more and more science is now thinking that not everything we see is in a way like an illusion. Very good, Mahesh. That's what I'm trying.
Yes, but with that knowledge, what do we do with that knowledge? That the first thing Srila Prabhupada said is, we cannot really know what's going on to our senses. That we have to learn. But we have to take shelter from those who have a higher vision. That's intelligence. So this is a very important point. The second point is that Krishna gives us this kind of perception as a human. And for all it's our reality in which we live, but it's temporary. That we have a gross body, and we are limited by the perception of this gross body. We are limited in what to do. For this gross body, matter exists, gross matter exists. But the demigods have a subtle body, and for them gross matter do not exist. They walk through it. When you leave your body, you leave with your subtle body, you go to the wall, because it's more subtle. It does not exist for us. It exists for the body. So these perceptions are important. We learn a lot from that. I see there are a lot of questions. We'll see how many we can take. Purna Pragya Keshava Prabhu. Yes, speak.
Hare Krishna. So in the verse 21, it is said that when the Lord desired to see, that illumination came. Actually, this is a little bit difficult to understand. Whenever there is Krishna, there is no darkness. He is the light personified. Even if you see in the perspective of the Virat Rupa also, since it is related to the Lord, so Lord can produce light, but he doesn't require to see himself with the help of the light. So this was a little questionable. Could you please explain it?
Yes, sure. He does not need the material world to get light, because he's the source of all light. If you see someone asked why is the sky blue? Because Krishna's body is blue. And what is the light of the sun? The sun is a reflection of the light of the Brahma Jyoti. And the Brahma Jyoti is a reflection of Krishna's body. That therefore the light in this world is a reflection of Krishna's body. So Krishna is light himself. And in the spiritual world, all the planets are self-effulgent, everyone light. So yes, Krishna consciousness means entering the spiritual world, which is full of light. And Krishna is light himself, so is the source of all light. So Krishna does not need, he does not have a body like us, a bodily construction. A bodily construction that, that needs this interdependence to see. Interdependence between demigods and objects and so on. Krishna does not have that. He is transcendental to all of this. So, because we are conditioned, that's not easy to understand, but Krishna is in a complete different category. Thank you, Purna Pragya Keshav. Does that help?
Maharaj, yeah, Krishna, there is another perspective that he is also generating so many senses for the taste. When he wanted to taste, he creates the tongue and so on.
Yeah.
But this understanding of the senses which he creates and he wants to taste that, how do we understand that he visitates for the jivas, he doesn't procure for himself, that's right, he is Atmarama. But when he says that we can understand from the perspective of the enjoyer of all sacrifices, so he perceives that Virat Rupa has got its own form, the Jajatek form, as a medium to accept the ingredients of the sacrifice as a source of enjoyer. But how does he perceive that? Does he perceive that in this perceptions through the spiritual medium, or I was having this type of how to understand that?
Yeah, when I was at an initiation ceremony from Prahlad Nanda Maharaj, he gave Brahman initiation to, and he said in his lecture, yes, you are now a Brahman, now it's your duty to eat on behalf of Lord Vishnu. To eat on behalf of Lord Vishnu. So Krishna desires to eat, and he uses the Brahmins to eat on his behalf. But he desires, and all these mouths are created, these tongues and so on, and yes, these are our tongues, and that's what he creates. But the purpose is that we are serving with our senses the Supreme Lord. And that's how he wants to taste to his devotees. And those who misuse that, and that's also explained, those who misuse that, yes, they are going to lower species of life, we have heard. Does that help, Purna Pragya Keshav?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, then we are hearing from Advaita Krishna Prabhu now. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you. It's interesting. I think the realization I take from this is that the senses are created for the Lord's pleasure when He wants to taste. So similarly, our senses should be for His pleasure. But the interesting thing is everything is based on His desire. As each of these verses say, because He desired to taste, He desired to sleep, He desired to do such and such things. Now, my question is related to Mahavishnu, Karanodakshaya Vishnu. Was it also kind of the same kind of desire that led him to glance?
Karanodakshaya Vishnu, Mahavishnu, and yes, all these living entities in his body which were dormant from the previous from the previous creation that and to fulfill their material desires and to liberate them, always these two, with that motive,
Yes.
he injected them into the Mahatattva, so that they can live out their material desires and at the same time work on get an opportunity of going back to Godhead. And that's also important for us, that always, even if we want to enjoy, we should enjoy in an atmosphere of Krishna consciousness. We will hear from Svayambhuva Manu how he organized his life as a Manu in always hearing about Krishna. That he would get up in the morning and he would have his servants recite the pastimes of Krishna, and then he would do deity worship and make the offering, and in the evening he would have dramas performed of the Lord's pastimes, always busy in Krishna conscious activities. Yes, in that way he attained liberation. Is that all right?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
It's very nice, Maharaj.
Moderate Kanta, please. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. I have some maybe quick questions. In the verse 25, they mentioned the controlling deity Vishnu. I think this is different Vishnu than Purushavatara, right? This is just the name.
It's in the verse?
Yes.
Can you read the verse?
His legs became manifested, and from the legs the controlling deity named Vishnu was generated.
Yeah.
This is different Vishnu.
This is one of the three controlling deities. That Vishnu and Shiva. Standing is the Shiva it's the Lord Vishnu who is in control of the maintenance. But it seems to be also a part of the creation, and that is interesting. But I think here, of course, we hear of different Vishnus. Karpatakashaya Vishnu and Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. That I think this looks more the function of Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. That who makes everything, because the desire is there, and from there everything comes. By his desire he entered every atom. By his desire he entered the atoms, but not just the atoms. Through the atoms he creates everything also. But we are speaking here not about the Visarga, but about the Sarga. The Vishnu will take up its function as maintainer during the Visarga. Because then it creates everything. That's my understanding. It's an interesting question, but that's what I can answer on the knowledge I have.
Thank you very much. Can I have another question?
Yeah.
Do we have time? This is the question about the verse 22.
Yeah.
Before we heard that everything came from the Lord's desire, but here we see the desire of the great sages to hear. Why is this not the Lord's desire, but the desire of the great sages, and they were already existent at that time?
Can you read this verse again? 23, yeah?
By development of the desire of the great sages to know, the ears, the power of hearing, the controlling deity of hearing, and the objects of hearing became manifested. The great sages desired to hear about the self.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, there were his devotees. The devotees want to have unlimited ears to hear about Krishna. That not one ear, unlimited ears to hear about Krishna. So in that way, yes, unlimited ears, and Krishna reciprocates with that desire. But of course, he reciprocates also with the desire of all the other living entities. But why the sages are mentioned here? Because the sages are going to use their ears in the service of Krishna, and that's the proper purpose. Therefore, he gets a positive example here. That's how we should use it. If we misuse it, then we are in trouble. So especially he does it with that purpose, and everyone should follow these sages, but those who do not follow, they get karmic reactions and so on. Does that help, Kanto?
Yeah, so some sages were existent at that stage of creation.
It seems, but and that's an interesting question, that because there were already living entities before Brahma created. We will see that in the Sarga, because we see that from the Mahatattva starts to move because of the desire of the living entity. Their false ego becomes manifest. They want to be the enjoyer, and then false ego combines with goodness and creates the element mind. And with the element mind, also the demigods in charge of the mind are created. So there were already demigods before Brahma. There are 3 sets of demigods created. The one who are when the universal shells are built, you have different layers, and for each layer a demigod is created in charge, and we will hear that in the 10th canto when Arjuna and Krishna are going to these layers to see Mahavishnu. They are worshipped by each of these residing deities, these demigods. And the second demigod is the creation. It is there when the false ego of the living entities combines with goodness, mind is created, demigods of the mind is created, and when the false ego combines with passion, then the intelligence is created. And when the false ego combines with goodness, then either air, fire, water, earth is created with hearing, with the touch, and so on. And all the demigods in charge of that are also created. But Brahma is not yet created. So there must have been also some sages. Where they come from, I can't answer it, but there were certainly living entities. Even if they were not there, then Lord Vishnu knew they would come, and for their sake, he created. Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, so this was an enlivening discussion. Very good. I'm in Halifax, and I look forward to see you tomorrow again, same time, and we will discuss tomorrow verses 27 till 36. Please read them ahead. You can also write down questions if you have, and if these questions are not answered during my presentation, then we can have again a discussion tomorrow. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhupada, Hare Bol.
Thank you.